Okay, good morning everyone. Can you hear me well? Okay, good morning everyone.
Yes, good
Can you
morning.
hear me well? So I hope everyone is doing fine. I hope this will work. You can chat in the chat if you want, but if you have some serious questions. Okay, good morning everyone. Can you hear me well?
Good morning.
So I hope everyone is doing fine.
Here in the comment
I hope
section
this will
below.
work. You
So
can
down here, I think
chat
you can
in the
type
chat if
something
you
and
want,
just put it,
but
and
if you
then
have
I will have a look
some
once
serious
in a while.
questions.
Good
Morning
I will
everyone.
answer
Can you
if
hear
there
me
are
well?
any questions.
So I hope
That
everyone
you
is
could,
doing fine.
here in the
I
comment
hope
section
this will
below.
work.
Okay, so here
You
so
can
down here, I think
chat
you can
in the
type
chat if
something
you
and
want.
just put it.
Normally it should be better. Okay. Is this better? Okay, thank you. So finally, good morning again. Okay, let's start with the announcement. I think everyone read it, or I hope at least everyone read it. So in short, what's happening is that we're going to cancel the lab exercises that were planned, so you don't have to think about those anymore. So what is the goal? That starting from this week, and then I think we still have 4 to 5 weeks. I'll check later. Is that you can just focus on the end assignment, right? We still have 3 remaining theory classes. So today I will explain the end assignment, and then in a couple of weeks I will give a bit more information about the other things that you need for the end assignment, like certain techniques, etc., that you can apply. It's very important, so I would definitely advise you to check this planning. So we updated the planning. It's basically the last weeks remaining for this session and for the module. By now, normally everyone should have handed in the tower. Thank you for that. I have a lot of submissions. It's still downloading. It was like 5 gigs, so I'm almost there. So thank you for that. Right now we're streaming, so that's here. I will explain again. I will explain the end assignment, and then you have 2 graded deadlines for that end assignment. So here on week 9, week 10 was normally the Crea week, but that's cancelled, right? So you don't have theory session. But if you want feedback on your end assignment progress, so starting from today, you can work on the end assignment. You can send us an email to ask for feedback, right? So that's optional, it's not necessary. But then in week 11, so in 2 weeks, you have to upload your first progress for the end assignment. So that's the first graded deadline. The upload will be on the day of our lab class. So similar like we did with the tower assignment, you will have an option here on Liho where you can upload your progress. So we'll go feedback on it, and then you can just work further on it, right? The same week I will upload a video for the end assignment again, certain techniques I will show. Same thing will happen in the week after that, week 12. This week for feedback is again optional, right? And then in the last week we have the second graded deadline, and that's for the compositions, but then we don't have any theory sessions. Okay. So there's a couple of questions here. So unfortunately I won't be able to open my YouTube video apparently. So I think you can just put your questions here. That's fine. I will try to read them. Is there a deadline for sending in the email? No. Let me go over the frequent ask questions first. There's a couple of questions here that that I type down, things that normally will be asked a lot. So again, the lab classes or the exercises that you had to do during the lab classes are cancelled. What you can do, or sometimes what you should do, is upload your progress, right? So here, this is optional. If you want feedback, you can just send an email. That could be on Monday, if you have lab class on Wednesday, for example, or that could be on Friday, if you have lab class on Monday. It doesn't really matter. If you want feedback in that week, you just send an email when you want feedback, right? Here, these are necessary, and then you hand them in on the day of your lab class. So if you have lab class on Monday, you upload your progress on Monday. Okay, so I can mute the sound, I know, but normally it was muted. Let me check again. If you hear me twice, let me know. So I'll unmute. Okay, yeah. Okay, so does this work? It's fine. Okay. So if you have questions, put it in the comment section. It's a bit more clear for me. Okay, let's continue with the questions here. Another question would be if I miss a certain deadline, so the ones in red, can I still ask for feedback? Sure. So that's totally fine. What we noticed with the tower assignment is that some people were afraid to ask feedback once they missed a certain deadline, but that's not a problem, right? Maybe for some reason you don't end up making the first graded deadline. If you still want feedback on it, you can ask feedback in week 12, right? You won't get points for it because you missed it, but of course you can still ask feedback, right? That's no problem. The stream is going to last, I think, 1 hour and a bit, right? Things about the end assignment, I'll explain them in a minute. So let's focus on this first. I think this is clear. I think the calendar is clear. Again, read through these questions. If you made a certain deadline, and the question here, if you made a certain deadline, can I still change it? That's definitely fine, and you can still change it as a work of progress. So that's definitely fine, right? Unfortunately, I won't be able to see you guys, I think, because we decided that every module will do their exams online. But maybe after the exams, everyone can come to school. I don't know. Yes, you will be able to rewatch the stream. But normally this should be clear. Okay. Okay, so for the end assignment, you can find it on Liho already. So we go to modules again. There's a couple of things that we give you for this end assignment. Of course, you will get the assignment fiche. This one, we'll go over it in a minute. But next to that, we also have mood boards for you guys. For the different settings that you can choose, and not every week, but in the coming weeks I will add to this, but I already have some thoughts about the end assignment, so I'll go over with it, or I will go over it with you guys in a minute as well, but this goes over research, and I also have one for ideations. And I will make one for compositions as well. So maybe it's better if I show it here. So something like this, and something like that. Okay. We have the mood boards, like I said, which look like this. Different moods that you can select, or that you have to select when working on this assignment. We also have the feedback templates, like that. So this is a template where you put your work for the first and the second graded deadline. These things you can find normally if you click on the end assignment. You will find all the things that you need here. I also noticed that one person uploaded their end assignment already, but I checked and that's the tower. So don't worry about it. I think it's someone from Dutch groups. I will change it, so that's fine. Okay. Okay. No important questions, I think. Let's see. Let's start with the end assignment. Okay, so for the end assignment, the title is the escape pod. So what we're going to expect in general, in short, is a scene similar like the one that we see up here. It's basically a scene on a planet with a crashed escape pod. So that's basically the setting. The escape pod is very simple, right? So we're going to put less design in this assignment this year. So it's more about the mood and creating this environment piece, and less about designing the pod per se. Right? Here we have a small, or I found a small text on the internet. You can read it through. It sets a little bit of a mood, so you can read it through. It's not that you have to make sure that all these things that you read here are implemented in your own version. It's just an inspiration. This as well, of course. This is an inspiration. It's from another artist, so don't steal from it. Right? You can get ideas from it, but don't steal from it. Okay. What we want to see is the moment where your character is crashed on an Earth-like planet. Right? So what is an Earth-like planet? It's basically it has the physical or the same physical laws as Earth that we live on, but it has a slightly different fauna or flora, I would say. Not fauna, but flora. And for example, mountains could be higher, trees could be bigger, taller, etc. Right? So everything can be a bit more rugged, extreme, and basically that I'm not going to say alien vibe, right? Because we want it similar to Earth, but at the same time it's not similar. I hope I make sense here. It has the same physical law, so we don't want to see hovering trees or mountains or rocks, etc. Try to think about prehistoric Earth. I think that's how I would describe it. I think if you Google that, let's see. Landscape. A bit like that, yeah. With the dinosaurs, again, I don't want to see dinosaurs, but like these very tall prehistoric trees and things like that. I think redwood. Yeah. So we have that on Earth today as well, right? These huge trees. So something like that, where you basically take elements from Earth and make them bigger, and you scale them up, basically. Okay. So I'll go more in detail in a bit. A couple of guidelines. We want you to design the escape pod, but not like you did with the pre-production 1 exam, where you make side views of the escape pod. What we want is a fairly simple design for the escape pod. It's one person. It has to be a cylinder. It's really important. Okay, so you have to make a cylinder, and you have to design it around 2060, right? That gives you a bit of room to come up with new ideas, I guess, and nothing too crazy. But it's very simple, and we want you to design the area, so the crash site, more than just the escape pod, right? So it has to be designed as a whole. right? But again, I will give examples once we go through these sheets here. Okay. Very important that the escape pod is a focus point, so clearly readable, similar like the example. It's somewhere in the fore or mid ground. That's important. It's open. It's also crashed. What does that mean is that maybe you have parts or basically you have pieces of the escape pod scattered around, but it's still readable as an escape pod, right? But it's a little bit crashed. It's more interesting than just a sphere in the set, right? We have things scattered around. That could be interesting. For the compositions, that's important as well. You have to work in a certain format, right? So you always have to use the CinemaScope format. That's around 4000 on 1700 pixels. This doesn't mean that you have to make compositions this big, right? But you make certain frames. So there will be a horizontal frame that you have to make. Not sure if it can, yeah, something like this. So every composition will have this kind of frame. Okay. I see some questions here in the chat, but again, it would be nice if you could put them in the comment section, because then I can just go through it and answer the questions once I finish going over the assignment sheet here. Another important thing for the guidelines is that we want the time of day around midday. So we saw a lot of sunsets for the tower assignment. So that's why we don't want to see sunsets, sunrises. That's really important. No night scenes, because most of the time that would be too dark. I don't have a comment section. Okay, like this doesn't work. Here. Okay. So if you don't see it, just wait for the questions and then you can type them, right? So I'll go over the sheet first, and then you can oh, it turned green, and then we can answer questions. Okay, so never mind. Okay, just a second. Okay, for the process, there's a couple of things that you have to do for us. Like I said, this assignment has two graded deadlines. The first one is the ideations, so basically coming up with ideas. The second one will be the compositions that we still want to check before you go into, I'm going to say holidays, but of course you have to work on the exams. But when there are no more classes. And then finally, based on the composition, your favorite composition, you make mood studies and then the key painting. Very similar to the tower assignment, right? You have to think of these end assignments as an option or a possibility, I guess, to show everything that you learned from semester 1 and semester 2, right? Everything that was important for the previous assignments will also be important for this assignment. So everything kind of comes together in this assignment, or in this end assignment. Of course, we start with the ideations, right? What we want to see, and this is really important, is the escape pod in the crash site and in the environment. Right? Again, we don't want to see just 2D views of the escape pod, but we want to see some perspective sketches, basically, of the pod in the ground, in the environment itself. Right? It says that the design of the escape pod itself is less important, and that's true. Right? It's just a cylinder, very basic shape. Of course, you have to find your references to take elements from it, existing elements, and put it on your own escape pod. So you have to design it in a way, of course. But again, it's more focused on the environment as well around. You will have to use the different mood boards, right? So you have to use one of the mood boards. It's not allowed to come up with your own mood board. I think you have a lot of options here. There's a wide range of environments that you can pick from. We have highlands, We have water, we have ice, we have jungle, we have swamps, etc. Beaches. There's enough option, I think, right, for everyone. So this is the overview. You will see that every setting will also have its colors to it, and it's really important that you think of these images or these boards as being moods, right? So they will convey, or they will set a certain mood while you look at it. Okay, parts of it you can use as a reference, and maybe you like a certain, let's say, maybe you like a certain plant and you want to use it, and that's fine. But it's not that you have to use every image here. So it's not per se a reference board, right? There's a difference there. The mood board is more about setting the mood, certain feelings that you get. And while if you look at your version, and let's say that you went for the moss one, we want to get the same mood. So here there's like a hazy environment. It's maybe a little bit of light spilling through. There's a lot of atmospheric perspective going on. You want to feel the same thing in your version. Doesn't have to be this yellow, green, or this kind of light per se. No, it could be a different kind of lighting, but we want the same mood, right? So there's a little bit of a difference there. What I meant to make sure is that you can definitely find more references. Right? This is not a reference board. You can take elements from it, but you have to find more. Right? If you find other plans that are interesting and that fit in this range, I guess that's fine as well. Yeah, if you're not able to pick one, no problem, right? Because in the ideation phase, you can, or you should, I would definitely advise you to do that. You should pick different mood boards, because each mood board would maybe give different possibilities or different ideas to land your escape. So for example, in the tropical rainforest, maybe your escape pod is somewhere stuck on the rocks, right? Or maybe it's somewhere hanging here in the jungle. Or maybe it's crashed in the water and you have this small rock base or something, and it's slowly drowning. Maybe it catched fire and there's a little bit of a fire going on. Maybe these are flesh-eating plants and they're quite huge, and your escape pod is in there. Everything is possible, right? You have a desert. The seashore. Strange island, so maybe it's a planet with different islands, white beaches. So there's quite some variation here. This is a nice one, the Great Tundra, that basically uses these coral-like plants that you would find under the water. Right now we're going to put them above the water level, and that can create a very nice, interesting scene as well. Again, here try to think about that this is an alien planet, so you can definitely scale or make some or certain characteristics of objects a bit bigger, a bit more clear. And this reference image, for example, or this moon image, sorry, I changed the shape of the rocks or the mountains. I changed the shape of the tree already. Right? Here we have flesh-eating trees. You have these misty mountains with trees, the end of the forest basically on it, with flesh-eating trees, flesh-eating plants on the ground. So just imagine how this scene would look like if your escape pod, for example, crashed through the canopy of the trees and is lying somewhere in this field of flesh-eating plants, right? So I think there's a lot of options here. And I think every mood board will trigger a certain ID, right? Or more, of course. So Jordi is here. I will make Jordi moderator. I'm not sure what he can do right now. I think he can try some things out. Right? Okay. So I think that's clear, the mood boards. For the composition studies, again, what's important is that you have to work in a certain format, like I said, so that would be this horizontal format. In this phase of the process, you have to base yourself on one ID and one reference mood board, right? Then we have the mood studies. For this assignment, we're not going to break it down in light or color studies. That's up to you. If you like to do light studies first, so that means grayscale studies, and then transform it in color, that's fine. That will take you 2 steps. If you just want to make your mood studies in color directly, that's fine as well. Maybe here, so we use the mood of these mood boards. Can it be absolutely different environment, landscape, and color? No, because if you have a different landscape, a different environment, and different colors, you probably won't have the same mood, if that makes sense, right? So stick with these reference boards, stick with the mood boards, but you can definitely find more references that fit in that mood, that fit in that setting. The key painting is basically the final version of the setting, and so you have the mood studies. You pick one, similar like we did with the tower. You pick one and you add details on it, right? For the detailing phase, I will make another video. For the composition studies and the mood studies, I'll also make another video where I'll explain a technique where you can add a little bit of photos, so photo bashing, because I saw some questions here, photo bashing to add more detail and more texture in your painting. Things will get more clear once we go over the sheets here in Photoshop. So just a second. What we want in the end is the production sheet. Like always, we want to see everything. So everything that you made, hand it in again, present it. That's really important. We want to see an intro, the IDs, that's the ideation, the compositions, the mood studies, finally the key painting, and also, and this has been updated. So if you already downloaded the assignment file yesterday or the day before that, please make sure that you re-download the file, because we added this reference sheet. We thought it would be clear to have your references intertwined here with the other chapters or parts of the production sheet, but maybe that wasn't clear, so we just want to make sure that everyone shows their reference, because it's super important. So that's why we added this additional sheet in the end, right? We have 2 deadlines, like I explained here with the calendar. So we have in week 11, so that's 2 weeks from now, we have the deadline for the ideations. And then we also have 4 weeks from now, the deadline for the compositions. Okay, so that's stated here. What do you hand in the end? 3 things, because we won't be able to see you guys and talk to you about the work that you did. It would be nice if you could make some kind of presentation video of your project. You don't have to film yourself. If you want to do that, that's totally fine, but it's not necessary. What we want is just where you open your production sheet here, and where you just go through your different slides and you talk a little bit about it, just like you would do on a normal presentation. It's maximum 3 minutes, so that could be only sound, it can be video, again that's up to you, but just a very short presentation where you go through your production sheet, talk a little bit about the things that you did, things that you liked, and that's it. Okay. We also want to see your lab exercises again, because for us it's a little bit easier to have everything grouped as a whole. So all the exercises that you did during the previous weeks, also hand these in, and then of course your production sheet. Right, so again, that's a prints and presentation folder. I've made this image here for you guys. I think it's very clear what we expect if you look at it like this. So we want the main folder, the presentation video, and then the different folders. Okay. Then we also have this evaluation criteria. What does that mean? It's basically some kind of general, you could say it's some kind of rubric, things that you have to pay attention to. Right? So we have different sections, we have different pointers within the section. So we have the presentation, and then things that you have to make sure that you have within presentation or when you present something. We also have something about creativity, because most of the time people will ask how many thumbnails, how many sketches, how many this, that do you have to make. Again, for us it's very hard to say, and that's why we have this creativity meter basically, and that's basically 4 pointers that you can ask yourself to check if you have enough sketches. Right? Do you have enough sketches? Is the quality okay? Do you have different ideas, different creative ideas, and are they original enough? And I think everyone can imagine if you just make 5 studies, that probably you won't be able to meet these standards here. Right? We have something about thumbnailing, composition, perspective, the mood studies, the key painting, and so on. Right? This is if you steal from other artists, if this is not your idea, you will get a 0 for this module. Right? Same thing here, we don't want to see any usage of 3D. So if you use 3D, that's also 0 for this module, because we want to see if you can master your perspective, of course. Okay? So please read this through. If you still have questions in the coming weeks, you can of course ask them. I have this, where is it? This discussion option under the assignment files, discussion and assignment. I would prefer if you put your question here instead of emailing it to us, because if you put it here, we would get an email as well. And the cool thing is if you put it here, other students can also read it, right, and learn from it. So that would be nice if you could put your questions here. Okay. Are there any questions about the end assignment, things that maybe are not clear? I noticed that there were a couple of questions, so maybe you can copy them and put them again in the chat if there are any questions. Okay, so the pot is not spherical, it's cylindrical. It has to be a cylinder. That's important. The environment can be foggy. Sure, if you want the foggy environment and it fits in that mood board, that could be foggy. Does it have to be an exterior? Yes, so it has to be on an Earth-like planet, so it's not inside somewhere, it's following the mood boards here, it's outside. Right? It's no caves, please, no caves. So that would be too dark probably as well. And you can photo bash for the final result. Those things I will show in a minute here on these feedback sheets or thought sheets, I think. For the mood studies, I don't really understand the difference of color studies. So color studies and mood studies, where is it? Yeah, so color studies and mood studies is basically the same, right? It's color or mood, it's the same thing for us. So color studies, mood studies is the same thing. So if you want to work, somewhere like the tower assignment, if you want to work from grayscale to color, that would be the mood studies, or you can just work directly in color, that would also be the mood studies. So what is the process here? You start with your IDs. small sketches. It's based around the pot and a little bit of the environment around it, like this. So this is the pot, and it has a little bit of the environment around it. This is a pot in a tree, this is a pot in a plant, this is a pot with a parachute in the tree, etc. Right? So these are the ideations. Based on the ideations, you will make your composition studies. I have some of them that I can show already. I think it's here, sketches, compositions, like these. Right? This is the composition study, where you take that idea of having, which one was it? Here, this crashed escape pod in a field of flesh-eating plants. Right? That's your idea. It's not that you only design these escape pod, but you also design a little bit of the environment, and then you make a sketch of how it would look like as a composition, as a point of view where you may be inside the scene itself, right? And the designing basically doesn't stop here. You can still design the escape pod, right? Because maybe you see a different angle. You can still design a little bit, but again, it's the main shape is very simple. It's just a cylinder, right? So for the compositions and the ideations, it's important that you keep designing, but that you think of the whole. That you design the pot, but you also design that environment. So based on that previous idea where we have this escape pod crashed into that field of flesh-eating plants, you make a sketch, maybe add some notes again, things that you think about, and then in Photoshop you can add these borders, right? Because that would be the frame that you have to use every time. Because that 4000 on 1700 pixels wide kind of frame, and the CinemaScope frame. Right? Oftentimes I also get the question, do you have to make or can we make the composition studies in Photoshop? Again, I say that every time, I would advise you to stick on or to use pencil and paper, pen and paper, because it's so much easier to control your line weight, to add thickness to it, to add scribbles, to add a little bit of texture, to add a little bit of notes to it, a lot faster than working in Photoshop. And I'm pretty sure that there are people here who can work better in Photoshop while drawing lines, right, making line art. But I'm also pretty sure that there's maybe 2 or maybe 5 of them of the 200 students. Right? So in general, again, I would say work paper, pencil on paper. The small changes, the frames, for example, you can put in Photoshop. The scalings, maybe you think this is a little bit too small, you want to make it wider. Those are things you can change in Photoshop, of course. Right? But it's always more easier, especially if you just start painting and drawing, to work in your sketchbook. Okay, so I hope this makes sense. What else? Yeah, I think I missed this. So you can definitely have different weather and where is it? And lighting conditions here. And so we work different moments of the day, weather and seasons. So that's definitely possible. That's true that the environment will change, right? But just imagine that. Let's see, let's open the mood boards again. Here. So this is snowy, right? You can have a little bit of snow, you can have the sun shining, etc. With this one, I think it's less plausible to have like a snowy scene, right? Because then you won't have this same setting anymore. Here would make more sense that maybe you have a little bit of rain. Maybe it's acid rain, right? Where you see a little bit of the rain, and then you have smoke coming off, I don't know, trees and plants and the water even, or maybe the water turns another color, right? So you can definitely change the conditions, but make sure they're kind of fitting for the environment you go for, of course. If you put snow here in the jungle, in the tropical rainforest, that doesn't work, of course. Yeah? Wildlife is fine. I'm talking about small animals like a bird. We don't want to see dinosaurs. We don't want to see mutated lions or whatever. Right? Keep it simple. Why here again? Because most of you are not able to draw animals, right? We didn't practice that. It's super hard. If you put a huge animal there and it looks off, then that's a bad focus point. And in the end, we don't want an animal as a focus point, right? So you want the pot in the focus. So a small animal like a bird can definitely set the scale, and that's small enough to place it somewhere in your environment. Yeah, I have the feeling that the cylinder is a problem. So sure, you can change that cylinder shape a little bit. It can be tapered. You can have a little bit of a wing extruded shape to it, similar like we have here. Because if you look at it, you would still say that the overall shape is a sphere. Right? If you would ask people here on the street, probably not. That's a bad example. Probably not this time. But if you would ask people, everyone would say it's a sphere, even if you have these things sticking out. Right? Okay. Let's see. So a parachute is definitely fine. Cables, whatever things that you need to safely land on that planet, definitely fine. We'll talk about that a little bit later. No, because here, so this question is the first image in representation. No, because everything here is with photos, right? No, we don't want to see cities. Please stick with the mood boards. Underwater, I would say underwater you can kind of try that with this one where we have the ice lens. What could happen is that maybe your escape pod crashed through the ice, so you slightly see underwater. I think that could be an option. So this I will explain in a second. Here as well. So no alien tribes, no aliens, no humans, no huge structures. Keep it simple, guys. So just a pot, escape pod in an Earth-like setting. Yes. Can you guys still hear me? Okay, I have two students listening, so that's fine. It's not really fine, but everything is being recorded, so if you want, you can still watch it later. Okay. Yes. Okay, yes. Let's continue. Maybe it makes more sense to start with this. I was going to start with this here, but this is more as an inspiration and reference. So maybe it makes more sense to talk about this first, where I go through different things that you can try for this and this side. Okay. So I've break it down in three different techniques that you can use. First one is the ideation in the sketchbook. Then you can do, or you can come up with ideas while doing photo bashes, and then you can also make silhouettes and try a certain filter in Photoshop to find a little bit of more information and make a more finished kind of sketch. Okay. Of course, there are different techniques. There are more techniques. Maybe you use another technique, or maybe use the technique in Preproduction 1. I think I once talked about working with Lego or clay, or even if you're I don't know, cooking and you see a tomato or a potato and you see some kind of alien, I'm not going to say alien, Earth-like landscape in it. Take a cylinder, I don't know, find something and take photos from it and work from there. Everything is possible, right? But I think that's why it's first. I think it makes more sense to just start in your sketchbook. Yeah. What's really important is that you first try to sketch down your ideas. While I'll talk about this assignment here, most of you probably have some kind of idea already. That would probably be, I think, the most simple thing is just a crashed crashed escape pod in the sand, for example, something like that. Or maybe it's an escape pod crashed in a tree. Right? Those are your top layer ideas. Those are the most obvious ideas, but just sketch them down. That's totally fine. Again, work on paper, work with a pencil. It's a lot easier. It's written here. It's quick, easy. It's honest. There's no shortcuts. You just draw. That's really important. Use your references. Use your mind map, and focus on interesting stories. Right. So you definitely have to come up with stories. Try to imagine that you are in that escape pod. You just crashed in one of the mood boards. Right. You crashed in that environment. What would the setting look like? So again, I don't want to see, or we don't want to see for the first graded deadline, just side views of escape pods, a bit like that we see here. We want to see the escape pod in, I'm a little bit distracted because I see something of my kitchen. Never mind. Okay. And we want to see the escape pod in the environment. I think that's clear. Okay. And so you design the hole. Normally this was a little bit higher. You design the hole, and we want to see how that escape pod basically is crash landed in the environment. Right. So please remember, also draw a little bit of the environment around it. This is not. These are not compositions yet. Right? It could be a start of a composition. Right? You could imagine that maybe this is somewhere in the foreground and we see a landscape in the background, but it's not a composition per se. Right? It's a little bit more than just a side view sketch. What is important is that you put them in perspective. Okay? So you make small perspective sketches of the escape pod and the crash site, and you also add the certain notes that you have. So the IDs, basically, what is the ID here? You add that with it, and maybe mood reference. Certain references that you have, maybe certain inspirations that you like, you can put those in there as well. I saw a question here, can you add color to it? That's fine. This was done with markers. The other one is done with watercolor. What you can do is, like the favorite ones, you can give them a little bit of color, or you can color all of them. That's totally fine. That's okay. Some tips here. You can try to do 2D animation studies. What does that mean? Is that an animation study is basically from point A to B and maybe C. That will help you to visualize how the crash site could look like. So what does that mean? I have this pot here in the tree, right? I have a small arrow here, so that here I want to indicate that the pot basically crashed through the foliage. So maybe to make that more clear, you could have a state where you have just a nice tree, the pot a little bit higher, and then you have this as a B version, right? That can help to show your idea a little bit better. It's not necessary, but that can help. Visual library sketches will be very important to come up with ideas. That's really important, but that's something I will address here. What else? Elevations will be important as well. What is not interesting, and that's something I've put here, is that you just have a cylinder crashed on a flat surface. That's not interesting. Right? What is more interesting is that you have a little bit of elevation. You have the earth scattered around, or maybe have different materials scattered around as well. So this is already more interesting. For our milestone, for our first graded deadline here, we want to see them in perspective. So that would be the obvious next step. Okay. This one, and keep in mind that the landscape elements also need some kind of designing. What do we mean with that? Is that if you look at the example to the right, this would be a normal tree that would find on Earth. What we want to see is that it has the same landscape elements basically, so it can still have trees, but it's different from Earth, right? It has different sizes basically. So instead of having these normal sized trees, you could have bigger ones, taller ones, like that, right? This looks like a strange planet, right? But it still feels Earth-like because there's elements that we recognize. That's important. That's why I wrote here, don't go too crazy. We don't want to see flying trees. We don't want to see hovering rocks. We don't want to see cityscapes in the back. Keep it simple. Okay. Okay. Second one is ideation with photo batch. What does that mean? Is that if you go to the mood boards, if you go to additional references that you find for mood boards, sometimes it can happen that you get a certain idea, right? You just look at an image and suddenly you get an idea. I had the same thing with this image. I have this where we see a truck being stuck in the swamp. This is a reference image of an Apollo lander, the re-entry module basically of the Apollo missions. So what I did is I combined basically those two images together. Right? There's a couple of things that you can do while you make a photo batch to get new ideas. So what is the goal here is that this triggers something, you get a certain idea, you put your references in that image and you combine them to make your idea more readable. Yes? You can hear me, okay. But I asked that maybe 10 minutes ago. But okay, I'm glad that you can hear me. There's a couple of things that you can use: the content aware, color balance, the filter, the clone stamp. Maybe it makes a bit more sense if I do a little bit of a demonstration to show you how you can do a very quick photo batch, right? There's something actually that I found this morning. Let's see here in inspirations. I have a folder called IDs, and these are images that I liked, right? Certain images that triggered an ID with me, a plane stuck in trees, basically, or in swamps. But then this morning I saw this image here, and I really like the setting. Of course, the row we want to get rid of, all the text we want to get rid of as well. But this looks like it could be some kind of ancient huge forest or something, and then we have the escape pod somewhere crashed inside, right? So what would be the idea here if you want to do the photo batch? A bit similar like we did in the first semester, is that you take this image like that. And first you want to get rid of all the information that you don't really want. So you have the text. I don't like that, so with content aware, I have my shortcut on Shift F5. If you don't know where it is, edit, fill, and then you select content aware. Photoshop is going to get rid of all the information that you don't really want. It's really important here is that this is not really a painting. This is just a quick way to get ideas on paper. I guess it's not really on paper, but you get what I mean, right? The road I don't want. Voilà. So this is our setting. Looks a bit weird right now, but it kind of triggers a new idea to me, is that maybe this is some kind of canyon. It could be nice. I take this element, let's see, this part, copy it, paste it, and then I make it a little bit darker, like that. That could be nice. Maybe you want to have some plants hanging over this edge. That could work. And I want to do the same thing with this one. So hide it. Voila. So I have like this huge forest, but then I have canyons going through the forest or something. That could be interesting. Of course, I want my escape pod still, so we can go through the references. Again, the references, I'm going to go over them in a couple of minutes as well. I have this other sheet that I want to go through, but let's see. Let's go for one of SpaceX. This one maybe. That's a nice one. You can take it. Copy. Oh. And paste it. Right? Looks a bit weird right now, because the colors are different, etc. So I will show you a couple of tricks here that you can do to make it more fitting for this environment. Things that are also written down here. Okay, but I think it makes a bit more sense if I demonstrate it very quickly. I want to go for that cylinder shape. So right now I'm just going to stretch this a little bit. I'm going to extend it maybe a bit like that. Voila. And again, the design of the pots at this moment is not super important. We still want it to be a cylinder, right? So you can maybe have it a bit more like that. We still wanted to have the hedge somewhere open, so I can change this part a bit. But all the other elements are at this point not important, because this is just an ID, right? I'm coming up with IDs for now, right? Okay. I think what is more important, right, is how do we get this here in this environment? We want to have an interesting story going on. So I was thinking we have this canyon here, this forest canyon. The escape pod came down like this. Looks a bit strange, but okay, it came down like this, and maybe it's somewhere hanging on the side somewhere here. It's close to fall down completely, or maybe it's stuck in against this tree. I don't know. I think you can put it here. I don't want to make it too big. Excuse me, because we want to have the feeling that this is quite a tall forest. So I'm going to make it a little bit smaller, like that. And first I want to change the colors. It's a couple of things that you could do. In the sheet here, it's written that you can use Control B for the color balance. Sorry. And we can decide that shadows should be a little bit more green, because we are in this green environment. Let's make a copy first. Nope. So make it a little bit green, like that. And so on. You could even change the levels to make it more fitting. So that's definitely an option. But what I like to do, and it's not written down here, so that's like a treat for you guys, the people that watch the theory session, I guess, is that you can also go to image, adjustments, and then match color. So what will happen is that Photoshop is going to match the values and the color of your selection, of your layer, to something else. So you can select source. I can go to forest PNG. So that's this file basically currently open, and then I can select layer 1, which is the forest environment. And as you can see that Photoshop changed everything, and the levels and the colors. I still have the option here to fade and to put some kind of opacity filter on it, I guess, like that, to blend it a bit more. And then you press OK. I have a double, I have a copy, so I can still change it if needed here. Voila. But I kind of like it. You merge everything. you could still put a mask on it and get rid of some of the, or basically change the solid a little bit so it fits a bit more inside this this environment, right? And then at this point, it's really important to get your ideas across. What is going on here? What do you want to show to us? What is your story? It's not about rendering this thing out. That's not important. It's about what's going on and what happened. So here, for me, this feels a bit like a hatch. We have a hatch here, but that could be something else. Maybe this is some kind of side fin or something that is being used, let's see, to safely land. You can maybe, no, this won't work. Let's just draw it in. Put it on the underside as well. But if I want the hatch here, so maybe have a bit like that. A little bit of shadow here. It's not clear, so then you could, if you think it's going to take too much time to repaint it, you can easily make a note. Right, you can extend this, and you can easily make a note here. Side fins landing or something. Right, so that's definitely fine. What's the story here? What I like to do maybe is that, okay, maybe you crash the pot here and there's a, I don't know, things rolling down the hill. Maybe there's boulders, maybe it's other debris, maybe you came down with a meteor shower or something and part of the forest is destroyed. So we have these collapsed trees falling around, but then at the same time you have the canyon still, right? So maybe you have trees lying on top of that canyon, but then for some reason you're not able to go to that tree at this point, so you have to take part of the escape hole basically to make some kind of bridge. Right? That could be the idea. And then you see parts of the escape hole being used to make bridges, whatever. And maybe that's your idea, right? And then you focus on making that idea more clear. Yes. So this is basically what we mean here with that photo batch. Here was the idea. It's basically the same idea. Okay, so it's the same idea, but then in a swamp. Yeah? So you have the escape hole, it came down. It's partly sits here in that swamp, and parts of it are being used to go through that toxic swamp. Yes. Certain details that you can't paint but that you want to add, you can easily add with images. You can easily add with notes as well. Yes. So I think that makes it clear. There's a couple of things here that I didn't address. Is the this one, the filter, noise, dust and scratches, is a very nice one to make your images feel a bit more painterly. Because images like this, photos basically, give off a lot of texture. They give off a lot of pixel density basically. So if you copy this and we paste it down here, and we want to make it more painterly, what we can do is we can go to filter, noise, dust and scratches, and then you see that Photoshop is going to get rid of some of these pixel informations where it gets less and less dense, right? It gets more and more smudged as well. So it is a bit more painterly like, and that could be a very good setting to start with, and then you start painting on top of it. Again, here this is all about getting ideas down. It's not about getting nice painting or showing your painting skills. So you can definitely color pick from within your image and work with the same colors that you picked. So that's definitely fine. Please don't try to select them. You can, of course, but then it will take a lot of time making just this one study. Right? Because it's quick and dirty, it doesn't mean that it has to be unreadable, right? You have to make your ideas clear. If you do things, if you paint things and in the end it's not clear anymore, take a step back and change it. Yes. Okay. This is the final technique that I want to show. It's a technique that some people will like, some people will find a bit harder. It depends on how strong your visual library is. But this is basically a technique that uses a brush that has an interesting silhouette. So what does that mean is that you have, if you make a stroke with it, it's this brush. Create some space here. So if you make a stroke with it, you get a more interesting shape than the one you would have while using the round one. Because if you're going to use the filter stylized filter basically, or the stylized filter on it, which basically creates an outline of your silhouette, you would just get a very simple outline. With this one, right, because there's a lot of texture in it, because we have a little bit of negative spaces, we also get these smaller indications and markings within the silhouette. Right? So that will allow us to create or come up with other ideas. And with this one, maybe these could be support legs, and the escape pod crashed with a lot of force or something in the sand, and it has to use these legs to stabilize or to maybe position itself in a better position. Or maybe this is stuck within tree barks or a canyon or something. Here I had the feeling that maybe this could be some kind of power cell or solar panels, where we have different cables running inside the escape pod to power something, and then this guy or girl is good to go to explore the world or something. I don't know. So different ideas here based on different silhouettes. Right? So in short, maybe very quickly here, if I get rid of this, you take a brush and you come up with, or you try to come up with a shape, the cylinder shape first. You try to come up with an environment, so maybe you have tree roots. It's important to have some kind of idea, right? So maybe you have tree roots. Cable here. And maybe this is a tree with I don't know, flesh-eating roots or something. I don't know. So it's this guy is in how do you call it? It's I mean, the sand basically. If you hit it, I'm not sure. I don't even know the Dutch word for it. How is it called again? Probably you guys will type it in the chat. But so you're here, and this pot is slowly going down into that sand, and your only option is to use the roots to save the escape pod or something. So that's my idea. Of course, the silhouette is not clear for us. So what we want to see is that you put more information there. And quicksand, yes, thank you. And this is something you can do is filter, stylize, find edges. And then Photoshop is going to put a silhouette, basically a line art version of your silhouette, and that will maybe allow you to add a little bit more details. Right? So that's basically the idea behind it. Of course, this is a little bit 2D, maybe a bit too much, because we expect these perspective sketches. So make sure you change that to put a little bit of roundness, I guess, perspective feeling in there. Yes. Okay. And then for the people who definitely want to put animals there, if you put like a small turtle here, this won't hurt your painting, right? If you put a huge snail or something, or a house here of a snail, that's fine, right? That would fit in that environment. If you put suddenly I don't know, a dinosaur here, that doesn't work, right? Because then the focus is on this dinosaur eating the escape pod, and so please don't do that. Okay. So I think this, I hope at least this makes a bit of sense to you guys. Everything is flesh eating. I like flesh eating things. Right now, what I still want to do, yes, I expect perspective sketches for the ideation phase. Right? Try to put as much in perspective because then it gives a better feeling of the environment for us. If you just stick with 2D, it's a bit hard for us to decide in which direction you want to go. Okay. Yeah, I still want to go over this sheet here, the research sheet, because doing your research will help to come up with interesting ideas or more interesting ideas. For example, this is an escape pod where we see the escape pod, but at the same time we see the scene of the guy or girl that was inside the escape pod. Because most of you maybe would think that escape pods can only land with rockets or maybe parachutes. But years ago, the first humans that went into space, they came back with the re-entry module, but at the same time they had to jettison from their escape pod and then land with their parachute. Right? So they were not landing inside that pod. Right? So knowing those stuff or knowing those things or knowing more about what has been done already and things that are working on today will help you to come up with new ideas. Right? So that's what I want to make clear with this sheet. So let's go over this one first. Yeah, I have 4 pointers, right? I think you can just take it step by step. So that's why I have 1, 2, 3, 4. Most of you will have, again, like I said, I think a couple of minutes ago, have certain ideas. And you know what we already know what we expect for the written assignment. You have certain ideas of an environment. If you close your eyes, you would see certain scenes already. This is basically the top layered ideas, I like to call them, in your mind. Will those be the best ones? Probably not. Right? It's somewhere in there, top layer, the most simple ideas basically. And then it's helpful to get these ideas out of your system to basically have place for the better ideas. Right? So what I always like to do is I like to start with the mind map. Personally, I'm not really a fan of words. I like to draw it more than writing down words. I like to draw sketches first and then put words next to it. So that's why I've put sketch map as well. But similar, right? So you just put sketches down, even without reference. You make associations, maybe you have a word, maybe you have a sketch, maybe you link something without looking at reference, you would think about something. The stronger your visual library, the more ideas you will be able to get down here at this stage. But even without any visual library, you would have some kind of idea. Right? Everyone grew up with looking at a movie or reading a book or seeing something about space with an escape pod, I guess. So that would trigger an idea. Yes. This is an example what I mean. And this is for an assignment. A couple of years ago, I had to draw a castle. I think they had to build a castle. So these were the first sketches. It's very low res, sorry, but these were the first sketches. It's just sketches from my imagination. Right? A cube for some reason. And then you start using references, and then the ideas get more fleshed out, they get better, etc., etc. But first you get to have these very small sketches out of your system. And that's the point I'm trying to make here. Other than that, than making sketches and the sketch map, what you should do is start get used, I guess, to the world of space, I presume. So try to already look at some movies. I have some movies here that we'll talk about, and try to maybe read a magazine, articles, a podcast, maybe something that triggers you a bit more. So that could be interesting. And then starting from number 2, this is where the references come in place, right? So time to get smarter. You find your reference. You have to find references. Not inspirations yet, because with inspirations you have the option, I call it option, to steal ideas, I guess. So you want to avoid that, especially here. you don't want to get too much influence from other artists at this point, right? Later stage you can do that, number 4, but for 2 you just focus on references, right? We want to find references. For me, there's a couple of questions that are important: the what, when, why, and how questions. So what is an escape pod? I think that's the first thing that you have to just Google: escape pod, Wikipedia, read it. It's not much, it's a couple of sentences, but read it. And then you go from there. And when do you use an escape pod? Why do you use an escape pod? How do you use an escape pod? Do we have escape pods? Why are they useful, or why are they not useful, right? That's really important. You have to learn. Here I wrote minimum 8 hours. I think that's definitely fair to say. Probably it's a lot more. For this assignment, personally, I already spent, I think, 3 days just reading about it, because that's another thing I want to make, another point, and that's this kind of pyramid. This year I'm really fan of pyramids. So first we had the composition pyramid, right now I have the internet pyramid. What I mean with this is that the internet is one massive pyramid of info, right? You would start gathering info about escape pods, and then you would read about lifeboats, escape systems, and then you have the Apollo and the Soyuz and the different space capsules and things to go into space, and then you have the space race, and then you have re-entry modules and crashes and so on. So you can just keep going into that internet, I think, and reading or learn about all these things, and that's definitely cool, but it's also a bit dangerous because you will spend a lot of time there, right? But the cool thing, and that's personal, maybe I'm the only one who thinks about it like that, but we learn, right? That's cool. Learning is cool, especially we as designers. I like to call us designers, even if you're working or you're going to concentrate on 3D, you also have to design your stuff. The learning is so important, yeah? And that's why researching is normally fun, right? You learn about all these things. How do you learn? The internet, obviously, books, magazines, museums, podcasts. Maybe your uncle is a space astronaut. Would be amazing, right? So go, like, maybe call him, I guess, learn about it, right? And by learning about it, and that's why I put this thing here, the more you learn, the more you research, the better your ideas will be. Because this is some kind of question. I'm not sure what the question was, but this was one of the answers I read, is that the escape pod is hiding, or could hide or something, within the meteor shower. So just by reading this sentence, you basically have another idea already for your setting, right? Maybe I have an escape pod within the meteor shower. How would this escape pod look like? But most importantly, how would this environment look like? Yes? Okay. Once you have these references, it's time to do your visual library studies and also make a list of characteristics that you find on these references. So we study the reference. That's really important, because I have the feeling that most of the students, like, they collect the reference, but they don't really use them afterwards, or they look up images on the internet, but they don't save them. Yeah. So we study the reference. The more you're going through these references, the more you know, the more ideas you will have, the more smaller things that you will be able to take with you. For example, you could have writings on the escape pod. You could have maybe thermal blankets outside the environment, a periscope, chain handles, like you would have maybe, because the cockpit is open, you would see the seat. Maybe you have these chain handles for the driver or the guy or girl sitting in there. To keep hold of the thing, I guess. So all these smaller things are things that normally you don't think of in this stage, because we are not used to think about escape pods, right? And then 4, that's where the ideation starts, and that's basically where we go to this sheet. Right? With 4, you're going to use your references, you're going to use your sketch map, you're going to use the design brief, right? So that's basically the assignment file, and you're going to make your sketches. If you have no ideas at all, you have to go back to number 2. have to find more references. Some people maybe do 8 hours, maybe some people do 20 hours. It depends on how strong your visual library and how much you like to learn about this topic, I guess. Right? When you feel that you had enough ideas and that you thought about all ideas possible and it's very hard to come up with new ideas, then it's time to find your inspirations, right? Because then you have the solid base of own ideas, but you could still spice it up, I guess, with finding inspiration, with finding other images that kind of did the same thing, right? With this one, you saw this before, and yes, we removed the spaceship and the figure, but what's here, we have this rigged kind of skeleton on the top. Maybe that's to make sure that this sphere would not like land and just continue rolling down the hill or something. So it kind of digs inside the sand. Here we have parachutes that deploy. We have these, I'm not sure what this is. I have to read it, but it's too small. But these things maybe helicopter the escape pod down or something, or maybe digs in the sand. Another thing I found, I'm not sure where it is exactly. I think, let's see, inspirations, artwork. I saved it, I didn't save it. But there was an image where they were basically beacons in the sand. So what I did is I put these beacons as well, right? But it's not the idea of the artist, right? There's more artists that put beacons in sand or beacons somewhere, but those are small things that maybe you didn't think about. And this crashed pot is my idea, but then these smaller details basically you can have from different inspirations. So that's definitely fine. No one is going to say, because you have beacons here and the guy over there also had beacons, you stole his idea, right? So that's definitely fine. Yes. So I hope this makes a bit sense. What else do we have is that escape pod is not a small spaceship. So you can have small rockets to balance maybe escape pod, and probably it failed because it's partially crashed. But we can have small boosters on it. But similar that SpaceX is doing right now with the Falcon rockets to bring them back to Earth. So that's possible, but it's not a small spaceship where we have like engines and they could just go into orbit again or in outer space. We want it to be a cylinder, and port one person has to be open. Yes. Okay. A couple of things here for movies. I have a couple of movies here that you can check out. This 10 best escape pod scenes that you can Google or YouTube, searching on YouTube. First Orbit is about the first person in orbit, Yuri Gagarin. You can check that out as a YouTube movie. Hidden Figures is about NASA, I think the Gemini or the Mercury project. That's basically here. So the first space flights from NASA. Hidden Figures. I still have to watch it, but it has like a 7.5 on IMDb, so it's pretty good. Salute 7. It's this one. It's about the space station. So the Russian space station. Space Walker. It's also a cool one. Space Between Us. I started watching it, but I don't really like it. It's with Otis from Sex Education, so that's cool. But I don't really like the movie. Maybe you'll like it. But that could be one. Cool websites. I have, I'm not sure here. Yeah, cool website. This is a huge website, but a lot of information. And he's very honest about it, I guess. Like he's writing about escapecraft and why it's not possible to have it, etc. But there's a lot of information, inspirations as well that you can read through, different ways of landing, etc. Really cool. And then you have enough or a lot other information as well, right? And that's what I mean is don't get lost. It's really cool if you have time for it. You can definitely get lost on the internet, but this is really dangerous. For me at least, I would maybe look at, I don't know, what did I click? Space suits, for example. And then there's a lot of information here. that you can read through. Right? So that's a cool website. Everyday Astronaut is a guy who wore this Russian spacesuit and took photos of himself. He's famous right now, but he has this interesting website about. He has different articles about space exploration and what's happening nowadays, basically, and how they catch up rockets that land, etc. That could also maybe trigger ideas for your version, right? The ways of landing, escape systems, etc. Because the rockets here, the things that are being shot into space, they have more than just a capsule. And sometimes things come down with it as well. So these things you could also maybe show in the environment. What else? This is a cool one, a masterclass. It will teach you for 200 or maybe was it 100 euro. It will teach you to become an astronaut. I don't think I have time to show the video right now. It's a small trailer. It's I think 2 minutes. Definitely watch it. It's for me at least to give some kind of inspiration boost. So you never know if you watch this video that you become the next astronaut or something. Really cool to check it out. Okay, so that's inspirations. Okay. Then I have this final bit. It's the history or the history of space exploration. Why did I make this? It's basically to give some kind of guidance or a little bit of structure for you guys, things that you can, or terms that you can already Google to get your references. Because I have my references here. Of course, finding references, and inspirations is a part of the assignment. So I'm not going to share these references with you guys. Sorry, you can do that after the assignment. That's totally fine, but not right now. And I want to talk about a couple of these things by using this guideline, so you guys have some keywords that you can Google, right? So it's the history of space exploration. I basically want to talk about how everything started, and it all began after World War II. And we had basically two nations that kind of survived, two super nations. We had Russia, or the USSR back then, and USA, America, and they were both striving to be like that superpower, the super nation. So they were investing heavily on rockets that would go to the other side of the world, but also in space exploration. And that's basically where it starts. So the first satellite, Sputnik 1, was sent into orbit by the Russians. Second satellite was with a dog in it, Laika. Unfortunately, she didn't survive, but that was two objects that were into orbit. And a little bit later, the Americans followed. There's like always a little bit of time, just a little bit of time between them. So the first satellite for the Americans was the Explorer 1, and then we had Vanguard 1. That's the first satellite with solar panels on it. So maybe you could also do something with solar panels in your escape pod. Yeah. A bit more important, again, Russians, is the first man in space, Yuri Gagarin. How did this work? Is basically this is the Vostok 1 module, and it consists of different elements. I think it consists of 3 elements that could be jettisoned during the whole flight. So you have this sphere module where Yuri Gagarin basically sits in, and this ejection seat, right? So it would go into orbit. I think he made like 1 orbit, and then it would descend again. So this thing would be jettisoned from the sphere module. The guy would go downwards towards Earth, and then at a certain height he would be ejected from the capsule. So those things, by knowing these things, you can maybe take ideas from it, right? So this was the whole module at the Vostok 1 here. So this would be jettisoned, and then this would also be jettisoned. So you only have the sphere, but in the re-entry phase, it didn't really work. So that was a little bit of stress, I guess. But then because of the heat, the wires burned through, and then this sphere was finally able to go descend into the Earth's atmosphere. And then you would notice that here Gagarin would be shot out in this capsule. This is just an image of a training camp, but this is how it would work, right? So even for the escape pod, for my part, you could have this cylinder shape that's somewhere inside your environment, and you have pieces of other equipment scattered around. It's totally possible. Sometimes it happens that things don't burn into space. So normally what they hope for is that parts of things that are being ejected, jettisoned outside Earth's atmosphere, that would burn up when re-entering. But sometimes that doesn't work, or that doesn't go as planned, I guess, right? So here you have these huge things, or huge, they have elements of that could be rockets, basically crash landing as well on Earth. Yeah, so that's definitely fine. What else? Then we also had the first, so that was the first person, but also first man, and we had the first woman, and then a little bit later, just a couple of months later, we had the first American in space as well. The Mercury program, the Vostok program. A bit more exciting, I guess, the Vox Hot program is where a person went outside, a cowboy in a space debris, went outside its vehicle. I'm going to say vehicle, it's the space module, things like that, really cool. This is really a lifeline, right? This connects him with his space thing, space, how do you call it, space vehicle, right? So what was the goal here is that having a person doing a spacewalk, and they had this bridge, I'm going to call it, so he would crawl through this tube, do a little bit of spacewalking, and then go back inside. Again, here stressful times because his whole space suit became bigger, so he wasn't able to enter again. So he had to manually do some stuff, I guess, to make his space suit smaller again, and then go back into this module. This again a movie, so you can check it out, Spacewalker. So that's nice. The cool thing, nice thing to know, is that this guy is also died, of course, but he was also an artist. So can you imagine that you're inside this space thingy, right? You're going outside in a couple of minutes. You have to, you're like the first person to do a spacewalk. Same time is like a little bit drawing, making views of here. So this really happened. He made a view of the sunrise with his pencils that were attached with wires to his wrist. Really nice. And then afterwards he started painting, right? So this is this guy floating around. So he painted that. Very nice. So he wasn't a cosmonaut and an artist. Okay. At the same time, the USA had the Gemini program, so a re-entry capsule with 2 astronauts. So this was 1 astronaut, 2 astronauts, Apollo, 3 astronauts. So all the way up till here, the USSR was always like the first nation to do something in space. They also wanted to go to the moon, but then their scientists to build the rockets died, and the other ones weren't that good. So eventually the Americans were the first nation to go to the moon. I think that is something everyone knows or should know. The Russians started focusing more on space stations, so you have the Salyut space station. Americans had Skylab, and this I think is more interesting. It shows the first international mission where 2 nations, basically the USSR and America, combined a space flight. So here you see, this is a rendering, of course, the 2 systems, so the Apollo system and the Soyuz system still being used. attaching basically, and we have a nice handshake, right? Space shuttle, I grew up with these things, space shuttles. This was the first one, was painted white, so we have two boosters, two rockets, we have the fuel tank. Normally it's orange, right? But the first one was painted, then they calculated that the paint on the fuel tank was too much, so in the later missions they didn't bother painting it anymore. So if you ever have a question about if this is the first space shuttle mission, you could say yes, because it's painted white. Cool. The Russians did the same thing with Buran. It's almost a copy, but they weren't able to do a second flight. They had one flight without pilots, real nice. So just shooting in space, orbit, landing again without pilots. But then we had the fall of the Berlin Wall, the end of the communist party, I guess, in Russia. So that was cancelled as well. We had the Mir, and then nowadays we have International Space Station. Right? At the same time, we have different factions, we have different nations, different companies also wanted to go to space. I think SpaceX is one that a lot of people know, but Boeing, Virgin, all these companies are going into space. We have different nations as well. We have China that had their first astronaut, a human spaceflight in 2003 with the Shenzhou capsule. And we have the Soyuz capsule, the Shenzhou capsule, and they look like this. And just by, again, hopefully, by talking about right now, you get some kind of pointers that you can Google just to understand how these things work. Right? So this is the Soyuz capsule, where you have 3 different modules, and this is the only thing that re-enters our atmosphere. And then it's up to you, of course, to Google how this works. So how do people get these things down, right? Because sometimes it doesn't go as planned. Which one was it? Vostok. So this is a capsule, right? Part of the heating shield destroyed. Was it here? Yeah. So this one, right? The parachute didn't open. The first Soyuz parachute didn't open, so it just crashed on Earth. And this is what's left of him, right? Crazy. Sometimes they land in water, or I think with I'm not sure, with the Russians or Americans, there was a mission that landed on ice on a lake, and the capsule sank to the bottom. So those are things that you can. This one, those are things that you can use in your versions as well. Right? So that could be nice. Yeah. Okay. So here, these are markings, right? There's certain markings that you have, certain writings. There was a guy here signing their descent module, as we have names here. I have an image somewhere of a cosmonaut signing his capsule. So those are cool. Right? You can try to Google as well. I think that's about it for this sheet. This is the way they put machines on Mars, right? Floating cushions around it. Maybe that's something you can take with you as well, where you still have these floating bits or the cushions maybe scattered around as well. So again, the more you read about this, the more you're going to research about this, the better your ideas will be. That's basically what I want to do here. And then finally, before I answer some questions, we have these feedback templates. I think I showed them again. This is the first template that you have to use. I hope you guys still hear me. If you hear me, maybe just put yes. These are the templates that you have to use for the first graded deadline, the things that you're going to send to us, your sketches. This is a checklist. Yes, okay. Thank you. This is a checklist that you have to use, or that you can use, basically, to check if you have enough ideas, if your ideas are good, if the things that you draw are what we expect. And basically it's the things I just explained, these couple or this last hour. So I want to see, or we want to see perspective sketches. Do you have enough ideas? Did you spend enough time getting references, etc.? Are these ideas original enough? Do I have them worked out enough? Do I show different techniques? And perspective here. This is what I want to show. There's some room for self-reflection, so you can use that up here. And then we also want to see your references. The most important reference, not all of your references, but maybe you have a couple of ideas and you want to link to the references here. Basically, you want to make sure is that if we receive this file for the feedback, is that everything is clear, that your ideas are clear. If you need more pages, definitely fine. You just make a new page, totally fine. But the only thing that you have to change is your name and put your sketches, of course. We have the same thing for the compositions, but for the compositions, that's a little bit for later. I will make a new video for you guys, and then we can talk about that. Okay, so I think that's about it for this assignment. So if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat, and then I can go run through them to answer some questions. What if we make a variety of ideations that we have to use different references for? Yes. What if we make a variety of ideations? Yes. So what is the question? You just put more reference, I guess. Yeah. These are like the most important reference. It's not because here I have 5 spots for reference that you have to put 5. If you want to put 7, that's fine as well. If you need more, you just put more references. In the end, what we want to make sure is that you don't just put references there without thinking. Right? Every reference should link a little bit to an ID that you have. No, so you can add more references stuff, but they have to make sense. They have to make sense in a way. Other questions? Were you able to follow everything, or were there some lags during the way, or and are you able to find? So the question is, if you don't have drawing tools, can you use Photoshop? I would say try to find a pencil and pen and paper first, right? I think that should be doable. For some reason, if you're not able to find pens, paper, pencils, you can use Photoshop, yeah, because you have to do something, of course. But I think you can find a pen and a pencil somewhere. Okay, so if there are no more questions, I will wait a little bit. If there are no more questions, I think we can finish this. Let's see. So I went through the inspirations. Movies, artwork. So do you want to see every form of variation used? That would be nice. Yeah. So try these techniques at least once, right? I think most of the people will stick, hopefully will stick with the sketchbook. I think that's the most easiest thing to do, the most important thing to do as well. Just stick with sketchbook. Again, quick, easy, honest, no shortcuts. For people who are a bit more experienced in Photoshop, I would imagine that you do some photo bashes as well. But again, start with this first. This is something you can just do while you're lying in your bed or watching TV or something. It's take your sketchbook, take a paper, put some ideas down. Right? Don't wait until the last day before your deadline, because that won't work. Work a little bit. Today maybe 30 minutes. Tonight 30 minutes, tomorrow maybe 1 hour. Next day, if it doesn't work, skip 1 day, right? Try this. This is a technique that I wanted to show. This is not the best technique, right? Some people will see something in it. If you don't see anything in it, just leave it. It's no problem. this assignment, we definitely want, or for the first grade deadline, we definitely want to see your IDs. That's important. Perspective, sketches in perspective, IDs. Right? There will be multiple feedback moments. Right? Let's open the calendar again. So we have a feedback moment next week. It's optional. If you want feedback, you send an email to us. This is a graded one, so you have to hand in your progress. You will get feedback on it. Week 12 is again optional. If you did more, if you did new stuff, if you didn't work at all and started working here, you send your stuff to us via email. This is again a graded deadline. And then starting from here, this is basically where you work on the exams for the different modules. If you want feedback, you just send an email. And so I guess every day is a feedback moment day, right? Okay, so if there are no more questions, I think we can round it up. Final thing, maybe if you have a question still related for the end assignment, you can put it here in the discussion. Other than that, when is the exam? Right, good question. The exam date, the deadline we've put on June the 15th. That's a good question. If you go to lesson registers, you will notice that they still work on it, but you will notice that every class have a different date. You can ignore that for now. What we're going to do, we're going to put the deadline, okay, here, so it's changed already. The deadline is 15 June. So everyone hands in at that date. All right? Every group, every person on that date. Okay. So if there are no more questions, this will be the end. So be safe, and hopefully I will see you somewhere after the exams, I hope. The exam is just a hand in, yes. So we won't see you. No live stream, no, because that would take us too much time. So we're going to expect, I talked about it in the beginning of the tier session, so maybe if you missed that part, go back. But we're going to expect a small presentation video, audio or video, that's up to you, to explain your progress. But this is just a hand in, so if you finish on Monday 8, that's fine as well. Right? This is just the deadline. If you finish sooner, that's fine. If you finish later, that's a problem. And then it's closed. Okay, I think it makes sense. Yes. Yeah. Regis, I'll have to check. They've put 10:30. I'm not sure why 10:30, but I'll have to check with the with my colleagues. I guess we can put it on the Monday evening. That's fine as well. But I don't think these couple of hours will make a difference. But I'll check. Right? We'll keep you updated. So finish sooner, hand in sooner, definitely fine. That's totally fine. Yeah, and of course finish earlier. Yes. Okay. Okay, thank you guys. So if you still have questions, I put them in the discussion here, please. Okay, thank you. Bye. Be safe. Bye.